In order to stay 10 steps ahead of any envious attack or destiny swap attempt, you must be the villain. And what is meant by being the villain is completely different from someone assuming or adopting an apathetic nature, similar to the person who is posing some kind of envious attack towards you or attempting to destiny swap with you. Instead, what you're doing is you're flipping the narrative that a lot of people are going to try to place on you after you see their tactics and you start implementing boundaries of your own. And essentially what you start doing is you start neutralizing these attacks. Now, it's important to note this. It's so important to differentiate a person who simply doesn't like you or battles with feelings of competitiveness. And this is why the bulk of the content that I've made, not only on YouTube, but on TikTok, has been geared towards differentiating jealousy from envy. I think a lot of the time people try to oversimplify envious attacks because they're mistakenly conflating jealous attacks or attacks from someone who simply dislikes you or wants to compete with you with somebody who has reached a full-blown state of envy regarding you. And oftentimes I provide concrete examples of someone who may be posing an attack towards you and its surface level. It's just simply rooted in like their insecurities or them battling with feelings of competitiveness. Is you will realize, for one, the attacks are surface level. So it typically stops at gossip and he say, she say. Another thing is you will realize their target is fleeting. If you've ever been in, an environment where there were multiple people present and there was like this one ringleader who always started gossip and he say, she say, and it was just more so rooted in them wanting to be the center of attention because of insecurities, you will realize that their targets were fleeting week by week. So whoever was excelling this week, that's who they would start gossip about. Whoever is excelling the following week, that's who they start gossip about. Versus once a person has reached a full-blown state of envy regarding a specific target, their attacks are relentless. And their methods and their calculations, it's all rooted in method and seeking out every opportunity to tear down their target. And this is also prevalent even once a target separates themselves. This person will go on the hunt to find them again and to regain access to pose an attack all over again. And this is because once a person has reached a full-blown state of envy, I often explain it like this. They've convinced themselves that in order to alleviate those feelings of envy, they have to pose a constant threat to their target. And I also have other analyses on my channel where I utilized real life stories of people who were, the targets of envious attacks, and it actually led to some kind of physical repercussion. So this is not something to take lightly, and anyone who has been on the receiving end of such treatment, you guys all know that if you could have made it simple, you would have, but realistically, it does not happen that way. Another thing that I've often dissected too is envy runs rampant in professional settings. And I do make a lot of content that gears towards separating yourself when you realize that someone is constantly trying to pose an attack to your advancement, or if you realize that it's just a dead-end situation overall. Once the disrespect has gone too far, I strongly encourage you guys, and for people who frequent this page and frequent my TikTok, you all know I'm big on departing when you're disrespected. And I have a whole analysis talking specifically about that. However, one thing about me is I'm realistic. And I understand the fact that there are individuals who, that may be the end goal, but for the time being, they are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So they have to learn how to manage and sustain themselves until they pivot into a better situation. So as I stated before, it's so important not to oversimplify this topic, because when you take these attacks lightly or you assume that it's something that does not require intricate attention and calculation on your own part, people are going to run circles around you. And this is how a lot of individuals find themselves in undesirable situations. And this is why I wanted to make this analysis today, right? Because once you enter into prominent spaces and prominent positions, you're dealing with wolves in sheep's clothing, essentially, right? And that's how they attained their prominent position, is because they've learned how to conceal their malicious nature. So the essence of an envious attack, A destiny swap attempt is the person reveals their hand to you when you're in the thick of whatever trap they set for you. So as stated before, you're dealing with a skillful player in this regard. You're dealing with someone who has mastered the art of concealment, of deception, of manipulation. So the reality of it is this, and this is why I'm so adamant about affirming and validating you all's experiences, is because I know for a fact that a lot of individuals, you all did implement a vetting process and you all were hitting it off, or seemingly at first, and that's why you even let this person into your intimate circle or into your environment. You allowed this person to have access to you, and it wasn't until they got you right where they wanted you that their mask slipped. So I am here to affirm you all that there are absolutely instances where you dot your I's, you cross your T's, and you still find yourself in an undesirable circumstance, such as an envious attack and or a destiny swap attempt. And that is because the person has mastered the art of deception and manipulation. And this is why we start to get into the nitty-gritty of dissecting envious attacks and becoming aware of the not so overt signs, becoming more acquainted with the covert behaviors, the covert tactics that go under the radar. And I recently did an analysis on Maya, the character Maya from the hit TV series Girlfriends, where I talked about how there are instances where you are friends with someone and it's not until you hit a particular goal, you hit a milestone, you experience some kind of success, that those friends start to become foes. So sometimes it's an event that triggers somebody to switch up on you. So when you find yourself in the thick of an envious attack, a destiny swap attempt, you neutralize it by being the villain. And to further explain what is meant by be the villain, I'm going to read from a section in this book. The first section that I will read from is the be the villain section. And it states, the moment you realize someone has ran with a negative perception of you, do everything in your power to refrain from explaining yourself or pleading your case. And I'm going to read from another section in the book titled The Reputation Ruiner that explains why. And it states, through their target aiming to gain the approval from others to restore their reputation, the reputation ruiner entails manipulation of the target in a backhanded manner. The reputation ruiner aims to ruin their target of envy socially in order to have power over them or to have them at their mercy, desperately pleading for others to believe their side of the story. So what those excerpts are getting at is the moment you peep what someone else is trying to do to bring some kind of demise or to hinder your progress in life, and you start implementing protective measures, you start implementing boundaries, you start revoking your access in a desperate attempt to regain control or to regain control of the narrative, they will try to paint you out to be the bad guy. And how you neutralize those attacks or those newfound attacks of trying to come against your character and your reputation is you become indifferent to whatever they are saying about you. So when someone is trying to convince you that you are being difficult and that you are this newfound villain, well, you simply agree to it. You say, yes, I would much rather every single time be the villain in your story than the prey. Now, another thing to note is this, right? Aside from the interpersonal interactions and like our platonic relationships, our romantic relationships, our familial relationships, it's important to adopt this mindset professionally as well. And I actually saw a clip of, if you all are familiar, some of you all may not be, but there is an artist, a rapper, Cameron, and he was a part of the group Dissect. And I saw like a clip going viral of him talking about a collaboration that they were supposed to do. And one of the lawyers on his team actually had to stop him in his tracks. And see, this is the thing about it, right? Sometimes when you are making an executive decision, you are going to be viewed as the villain at the beginning, but it's going to benefit you and everyone associated with you in the long run. And he was transparent about the fact that even though other people were painting him out to be difficult, they didn't understand the fact that there was an executive decision that was made behind the scenes that actually benefited them business-wise in the long run.
Well, there was a time Jewel was supposed to put out a project with Lil Wayne, and it didn't happen. And they was like, Cam don't want the project to come out. Cam don't want the project to come out. And that's not what happened. What happened was, if y'all want to put this project out, we're taking 95%. And they say, Cam, we love you and all that, but we're not doing that. We can't do it. I said, but they really want to come out. He said, Cam, you listen, we're going to get 2.5%.
contractual agreements. And I believe that situation with Cameron, it perfectly depicted what I was getting at. There are absolutely situations where people around you or neutral parties, those who are on the outside looking in, may hate you for an executive decision that you make, but it's actually a beneficial move in the long run. And to provide some additional context, I'm going to read from a couple of sections in the book In the Lion's Den, Navigating Systems of Power, for those who are dealing with these kinds of attacks professionally or regarding their business. Sometimes you have to be okay with being the villain, or at least being perceived as the villain or difficult, because in the long run, what you're really doing is you're protecting yourself. Now, another section I want to read from is the implicated ink excerpt. And it states, never sign a document or contract designed to implicate you in the future. And lastly, I want to read this brief sentence from another excerpt in the book titled Endure the Honeymoon Phase. And it says, success isn't just about opportunity. It's also about recognizing and avoiding the locusts that threaten your harvest. So what all of those excerpts are getting at is this concept of being the villain or being okay with others perceiving you as such is no exception when you are navigating professional spaces. Because realistically, in order to protect yourself from someone who is trying to pose a threat to you, you have to become their antagonist. Essentially, you are getting into the habit of counterbalancing every envious attack and every destiny swap attempt. So realistically, when it comes to their story, you have officially become a villain to every attack that they are trying to pose against you. So in sum, the moment you refuse being the prey in someone else's story, you officially become the villain. So in sum, in order to stay 10 steps ahead or even neutralize destiny swap attempts and envious attacks, you understand the fact that the moment you reject being prey in someone else's story, by default, you become the villain. All right, babes, that's all that I have for this analysis. Of course, I want to hear you all's comments, your perspectives, and your opinions in the comment section below. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in, and I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next one. Take care, babes.